Hi, in this video we're going to talk about the Linux file system. File system basically means how does this operating system, in this case Linux, how does it organize directories and files on the storage medium? I will also talk about all the directories that the most common ones that tend to be installed when Linux is installed, and what is the purpose of each one of those. So in effect, the Linux file system is hierarchical, so it is an upside-down tree, the topmost being the root, and then these are all the system directories that I just showed you, and within the home directory is where usually all the user accounts are. So we will look at how those are on the Linux server. I'll talk about the home directory concept, and then also about what the naming convention is for creating names of directories and files, what the rules are, and finally about what file types mean and how we can find out what the file types are. So let's take a look. All right, I'm logged into the Matrix server, which is a Linux server. When I log in, I'm in my home directory. So pwd shows me the present working directory, and it's showing I'm from the root into the home directory, from the home directory into my username, which is praveen.matera. Here, if you see, that's the root. One of the directories under that is home, and then if I was user1, it would be /home/user1. In this case, it's /home/praveen.matera because that's my username. Another directory that exists under the root is bin. So I'm going to talk about the bin and the dev directory, and then you can read about all of the other ones as to what kind of files they contain. So let's go into the bin directory. Bin stands for binary. So if I want to go into the bin directory, I would go cd to change directory, tell it to go all the way up to the root, and then go into the bin directory. Now here, I'm now at the bin directory level, and I can do a pwd to show you that's where I am. How do I list the contents of the directory? ls is for list. So when I do that, you'll see a whole bunch of files which are contained inside the bin directory. A lot of them. So these are all executable files, many of which are commands that we are using. So we just used ls, and that's actually one of the commands, and that sits inside the bin directory. So bin directory contains many of the executable commands. And the third one I'm going to discuss with you is the dev directory. So again, from the root, there's a dev directory. And dev directory is a virtual directory, which means it's not a real directory. It just contains all of the devices that are connected to the machine in the form of a folder. So let's go into the dev directory. So cd / for the root and then dev. I'm now in the dev directory. And when I do ls, it's going to show me many of these. Now these are all virtual files. All the TTYs are terminals connected to the server. The SDA 1, 2, 3, and the SDA are hard drives. So any device which is connected to Matrix, that's going to be seen in the dev directory. So those are some of the directories which are installed when Linux is installed. Let's look at some naming conventions now. So first of all, I want to go into my home directory, and cd with nothing else jumps right to my home directory, which I can confirm by going into pwd command. So I'm now in my home directory where I have permission to do everything. I can create files, delete files, and so on. So let me create a file with a touch command which creates an empty file. So we're now going to look at the naming conventions. In Linux, you can have names of files and names of directories which contain lowercase alphabet, uppercase, a mixture of those. So I can do A, B, C. A is uppercase in this case, and then 2 lowercase letters. I can also have numbers. I can also have special characters. I can have what appears to be an extension. Now, Linux does not recognize or need any extensions. As far as Linux is concerned, this whole thing is the name because it allows special characters like the dot, like an underscore. So in Linux, even though you can make a very long name, even though you can use a lot of special characters like %sign or the tilde, the little squiggly sign, you can use a lot of special characters when you make a file name or a directory name. But it's not advisable to do that because many times when you create files, you're actually sending it over to another operating system, sharing it with other people. So you want to stick to something basic, which is uppercase, lowercase, numbers, dot, or hyphen, so that any operating system really can understand that. All right, so when I do this, I've now created a file called capital ABC123.txt. I can ls it to see if it's there, and there it is. It's listed that, so it's created it. Similarly for directories, it's the same kind of characters that are allowed. Now, file extensions are not really required by Linux. In other words, Linux does not depend on the extension to try and figure out what kind of file it is, unlike Windows where it relies on the extension for the file to figure out what kind of file it is. In Linux, you can use what's called a file command. If I say file, I'm invoking the file command, which looks at the file and is able to judge what type of file it is. So if I say file ABC123.txt, it's telling me that it's an empty file. If I refer to something in the dev directory, let's say file, and I'm going to point to the dev directory and tty6, so one of the tty files that we saw there, it's saying that's a character type file. Let's do an ls-l command here. So instead of file, I'm just going to show you ls-l, which is going to give you a long list of information for that file. So tty is one of the files inside the dev directory. And, oops, let's do this again. I forgot the L here. There we go. So when you look at the leftmost character here, and we'll discuss more about this later on as to what these things mean, but for now, just focus on the leftmost character. It's a C, which means this file that we're looking at is a character-based file. What does that mean? It means that anytime this either reads or writes any data, it's going to do that one character at a time. However, if you have a hard disk, for example, then it's going to be a different type of file. Let's take a look. ls-l to give a long list. Look inside the dev directory and look at SDA. Now here, the first character is a B. B is for block, and that means the hard drive or the hard disk does not write one character at a time. That would really slow it down. It actually collects a whole bunch of characters till it fills a block, and then it writes. So a block device is mostly like a hard disk. A character device is like a terminal where everything is going one character at a time. So how do we know what type of file it is? If I said file and then dev SDA, it tells me it's a block device. Here, when we said dev tty, which is the terminal, it said it's a character type of file. So there's three types of files we just learned about. The character type file, where one character at a time is sent. The block type of file, where it collects a bunch of characters. When the block is filled, then it reads or then it writes like a hard disk. And you have regular files, which are just either empty or just contain straight ASCII text. And that gives you an idea of what the file system is, what kind of directories there are, how it is structured. In the next video, we're going to look at how we can manage the files and directories, how we move, rename, copy, create, and so on. Thank you.